Thanks a lot. You know, early in my career, I had the extraordinarily good fortune of working at two of the most iconic music labels in the world, Motown Records and Def Jam Records. And what's interesting about that, they both became iconic, they both shaped culture, they were massive market powers, but they got to that place by taking the polar opposite approach. You know, Motown, you guys know this, is all about Smokey Robinson and Marvin Gaye and the Temptations, Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5, and Diana Ross, right? That's your Motown story. Berry Gordy, who was the founder of Motown, he did that by doing something really interesting. He took black culture, smoothed out the edges, and assimilated it into popular culture, into the mainstream. You know, he basically taught all the artists diction and social etiquette and how to dress. He created this aspirational image that could appeal to the masses. And it was so successful that they called it the sound of young America. Take Def Jam. Def Jam went the complete opposite direction. You know, Def Jam basically said, this is about remaining true to yourself. It's uncensored and uncut from the streets. It is the CNN of the streets. And if you saw the interviews or you saw the baseball caps and you saw the sagging jeans, you knew they didn't really care about the social etiquette thing. That was not their thing, right? What they cared about was this, and this was the most important thing. It filled a need at the time. It cared about teaching people how to overcome struggle outside the mainstream. And Def Jam did something else that was really important. It brought relatable images into the mainstream, people's real identities into the mainstream. And so you have this interesting comparison of Motown and Def Jam. I mean, Motown, one label, kind of created this aspirational image and brought people into the mainstream that way. And Def Jam created this relatable, authentic image of real people and said you can live outside of the mainstream. Well, I think something similar is actually happening in the world of media today. You know, the traditional media companies, they create an idealized, top-down image of identity, right? They typically tell us who we are. They typically tell us who we should aspire to be. It dictates what we should read, what we should watch. It serves as both judge and jury of what should be at the center of pop culture. And that actually worked for a long time. And then the internet happened. Social media and mobile technology changed everything, right? You know, you have 5.5 billion mobile subscribers worldwide, and they're hanging on to their mobile phone like it's the best pacifier in the universe. I mean, they're carrying that around with them everywhere where you go. And when you do that, something interesting happens. You know, people start to inform themselves in different ways. They start to entertain themselves in different ways. They connect to each other in very different ways. They express themselves in a very different way. You know, that was the transformation that we saw, and Buzzfeed essentially tapped into that revolution. You know, that sense of moving from this idealized identity to authentic. We're championing an approach that connects to real people, their real lives, in a way that is authentic. If you look at our Food Network is kind of how you mess around in the kitchen yourself. It's not about the right way to cook. If you look at our post on identity, it's about connecting to the real you and your real friends. It's not about how you should act. Even if you look at our news is not, you know, it's about the everyday life of people. You know, it's about topics like sexual assault on campus, things that affect people's real everyday lives. It's not a newscaster, you know, late at night telling you some boring topic that you should care about. We follow people first, and from that, we decide what is important. And this is the heart of what we think is the future. If we're talking about the future of media, this is the heart of it for us. It is empathy. Empathy is the thing that drives it all. If you think about most media companies, big brands, networks, they start really at that outer circle. They start with culture at large, pop culture. It's the biggest space possible you can play in. You spend lots of money against it, and it rains down on you like a waterfall. And you better like it, because it's coming, right? That's the traditional model of media and networks. Buzzfeed is actually taking the complete opposite approach. We're starting with what connects to you. We're starting from that point of what matters to you in forming your individual identity. And instead of it being a waterfall, we let you kind of create the currents and move it over into what connects you to your inner circle, what connects you to subcultures, and then from there, moving into the culture at large. And when we say it connects to you, what we mean is the things that actually strengthen your own definition of your self-identity, how you want to define yourself. And it's an interesting recognition because it's not a commoditized identity, it's how you define yourself, and we recognize that you're multidimensional. Some of our most successful pieces of content center around the identity like, I'm Muslim, but I'm not. I'm Black, but I'm not. I'm Latino, but I'm not. And what's interesting about that is that it recognizes that even within groupings in your identity, you are sometimes that and sometimes not. And it's a powerful thing when you get it right. We got this one right, I believe. And when you get it right, you start to get these really emotional responses, and you realize that people are not just consuming this content, they're using it. This is a girl actually in Australia who wrote in response to a series, a collection of content that we put on Snapchat Discover, our Snapchat Discover channel. It was lists and illustrations and videos all around Muslim life. And she said, every day I get called brainwashed for following my religion. As a Muslim girl living in Australia, I can't start to explain how much it meant to me to have a series dedicated to Muslims. Truly want to say thank you. We got thousands of letters from people, not only in this video, but videos like it, expressing that. It strengthens people's individual identity. But we also connect you to your inner circle, your people who are closest to you, your family, your friends. And this video here, weird things that all couples fight about, which is a hilarious video. But the video was shared tens of thousands of times. But it wasn't shared because it was a great video about relationships. It was shared because it was a great way for people to talk about their relationships. We talked about things like, I don't know if you guys had this experience, which way the toilet paper should go, should it be up or down? And, I think the guy said it should be up because that's where the label is being shown and all that. I think he might have been right in that case, but this content allows people to actually have the conversations in ways that deepen their relationship with the people closest to them. And then we go one step further to subcultures. And I think this is probably the most interesting area of all, because we live in so many different subcultures today. Sometimes you're a student, sometimes you're an environmentalist, sometimes you are an artist, sometimes you are a participant at a panel. You're living in all these different subcultures, and what we've tried to do is help you connect to the subcultures as you define it. And so even here, where we had we've done a lot around the LGBT community, but here there's a segment called the intersex community, and we did a video on that, and that just took off because it allowed people to actually feel connected to the people they wanted to be connected to. But we do go to pop culture. I don't know, how many of you guys have seen our video with President Obama? Anyone see it? It was a great video, milk and cookies, selfies, and everything like that. And what's interesting about it, though, is that it is pop culture in a relatable way. We've reached massive amounts of people, but we did it in the Buzzfeed way that's relatable. So in this world, as we're defining it, we believe empathy and human connection are the new superpowers for building a large audience. And I know some of you, and I understand this completely, some of you will say empathy. That sounds awfully soft. It doesn't sound like it's going to be hard-hitting and it's going to make something happen. You hear human connection, it feels like that's niche. That's never going to scale to a point where it's big enough to make a difference. But look, here's what empathy and human connection has done for BuzzFeed. We get over 6 billion content views every month. We reach the vast majority of millennials. In our cross-network platform, we get hundreds of millions of unique visitors. That's empathy and human connection. And that's doing it at scale. That's a human connection at scale, and that's a power that I believe is the new way to think about how we connect to people, how we build large audiences, how we build brands, how a network should work going forward. Now, when you have that human connection at scale, it's a power that allows you to do things that you otherwise couldn't. We have a channel called Tasty. I don't know if anyone's been on the Tasty channel. Have you guys? Yeah. It's absolutely awesome. It allows us to build the largest food network in the world, right? But here's what's awesome about it. You got about 60 seconds from the first ingredient to the final product. It's first-person point of view. And you're watching this thing made, and even if you can't cook, like I can't cook, right? I don't cook at all, but I'm sitting up watching these videos all day and I can't figure out why. I'm watching these, even if I weren't at Buzzfeed, yeah, I know. If I weren't at Buzzfeed, I'll be watching these videos all day. It's a process by which you actually become enveloped in the making of food. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you this video really quickly, and then I'll tell you what the impact it had. Was that awesome? I'm telling you, you can watch it all day, and I don't claim to understand every element of it. We had a spinach and artichoke dip video, which got 82 million views in 24 hours, right? 82 million views in 24 hours. But you know, you watch this and it becomes very, very addictive. So that's what this network, this type of human connection at scale allows you to do. It allows you to kind of build things like Tasty, because you have that deep understanding, that connection, that relatability and that empathy with your audience. But it also allows you to do another thing. It allows you to light up your network. You know, what we've done is we've built this cross-platform network, and Jonah Peretti, our founder and CEO, was here last year, and he talked about this idea of a distributed media network, right? Instead of forcing all your traffic and spending all your resources to drive people to your owned and operated platforms, why not go to where they are? If they're on Facebook, go there and deliver something to them in an organic and an authentic way. If they're on YouTube, do the same. If they're on Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, Vine, do the same thing. Go to where the people are. And we've done that. And in doing that, we've built this kind of power of an audience that crosses these different platforms. And so initially we used that power to try to light up our network to build our own products. We've launched apps, we've launched episodic series on iTunes and on Facebook and YouTube. We have launched Facebook pages like the Obama page, lighting up the network in a way that all levers are pulled at the same time. We then said, what happens if we give that opportunity to advertisers? What if we open up this possibility where all the levers are pulled and advertisers can participate in it? And coming out of that strategy, this distributed media ad strategy, was a product called Swarm. And Swarm is our 360 cross-platform strategy that's designed to light up our entire network in a big coordinated burst. It's in a condensed period of time, we light up our entire network across every platform. And it's been extraordinary. We did it in alpha phase first with our partner NBC Universal. And it was around a film with Tina Fey and Amy Poehler called Sisters. And we said, what if we lit up our network for a week leading into the release of this motion picture. And what we saw is not only did we reach large parts of our audience across the entire platform, if you looked at the content that drove most of the activity around the Sisters Movie hashtag on Facebook, Buzzfeed content was 3 out of the top 10 consistently for the entire week. It drove that kind of connection and created this kind of event that I think is only possible through this cross-platform network. And look, I love comments like this, and I'll admit, it's a little bit self-serving, because I kind of head up marketing, and so I chose a comment that I think is probably the most profound comment, that was made during the whole thing, but, I'm a little bit biased, and Angelique Felice, whom I don't know, said, "I wasn't going to see Sisters until I saw this. Universal, this is probably the best marketing move you could make." Let that soak in. Best marketing move you could make. I kind of like that. But this product was in alpha with Universal. And today we're announcing that we're going to roll it into beta. We're going to open this up for other clients because we think this is a unique proposition for Buzzfeed, a unique proposition for advertisers. Lighting up our entire network across the hundreds of millions of unique visitors that we touch across all the platforms that we operate in. Our own platforms, BuzzFeed.com, our video app, our BuzzFeed app itself, Facebook, Instagram, Vine, Twitter, Snapchat. We are on all those platforms, and when we light it up, we pull every single lever in a condensed period of time. So we're super excited about the potential Swarm and what it can deliver, and again, we're rolling that out into a beta starting today. So that's it. Empathy and human connection at scale is a powerful force, and that's really the secret sauce of what we're delivering. But there's something else that we've done that's been really powerful, and for me, this was a pretty big significant shift because as some of you may know, I spent about 12 years at PepsiCo, and I was global CMO at PepsiCo. We had massive reach. We had an incredible footprint across the world. And what I've learned from big corporations, the power of those corporations is awesome. But also, they tend to follow a perfection methodology, a perfection trap in a way. And we're in a world now where everything's changing at such a rapid pace, you need something that actually helps you adapt to that. And at the center of Buzzfeed is a process. And this process is the thing that allows us to look around the corner. And so while empathy and human connection sit at the center, this process underlies everything. It's this process of creating, distributing, learning, and adapting. It's really simple on the surface. You create things, you put it out, you get some information about that, some data, you analyze it, you iterate and make changes, and then you put out more content and respond to that. And you do that over and over and over again. We put out about 600 pieces of content every single day. And we're running data against that every single day. And when you do that, in the near term, you kind of get these incremental changes. You might change a title, you might change a character, you tweak it. But when you do it over and over and over, it actually has these discontinuities. A new idea pops out. A new brand pops out. A new platform pops. So it's kind of like what Jonah actually said this, and I thought it was a good analogy. When you have like the self-driving cars, what's really fascinating about self-driving cars is that they learn from each other. So it's not one driver who has the knowledge of driving on the road and all the mistakes and all the information about what changes need to happen in order to be safe. It's all the drivers. Similar in our system, where you have all the content that we're putting out across all the platforms informing what we think is happening. But more important, we create, distribute, learn, and adapt. And in fact, that's exactly how Tasty came about. So Tasty, you see the final product of it, and we all love it, but Tasty actually started off as a science experiment. It's the science experiments that you can do at home. That's all it was. And In that science experiment, we learned that, hey, people kind of like to do these things at home. They like to hack. They like to kind of see this first-person point of view as you build and change things. And that was interesting. So we said, okay, what happens if we take that to food? And we went to, of all foods, we went to instant ramen. We said, 11 food hacks that you need to try for instant ramen. And we got a great response on that. And so we started tweaking that and learning from that. We say, hey, what happens if you start to amplify certain recipes? What happens if you change the camera angle? We're getting feedback, we're creating, we're distributing, we're learning, we're adapting. And then you end up with Tasty, where we now have hundreds of millions of people across our cross-platform network who see a Tasty video every single month. But that was the path to it. It didn't start with 100 million people. It started with kind of a small experiment, us, Buzzfeed applying this notion of creating, distributing, learning and adapting, and then seeing something pop at the end of it. So I started off by talking about Motown, and I'm going to end the conversation in talking about Motown. What's fascinating to me in Motown is that Berry Gordy had his approach of creating the idealized aspirational image, and that was the foundation of Motown for sure. But the seeds of change actually sat within his company at the time. And the seeds of change, you could see it in an album by Marvin Gaye called What's Going On. It's an album that contradicted every single tenet of his philosophy. It had an opinion. It was about one individual, not aspirational, but real. It was political. It was everything that Berry Gordy disliked. However, it's the thing that actually set the pathway for Def Jam. And imagine if Motown actually had that adaptive operating system, where it actually put things out in testing and learned. Would it end up in a different place? Imagine if they recognized that at the heart of this sat empathy and relatability, a precursor to a lot of what we're seeing today. And I say this because I think that the seeds of the change that we're talking about, empathy and human connection at scale, exists within you now, exists within your organizations now, and the question is, how do you pull it out? How do you pull it out? How do you make it work? And I think Buzzfeed has created an infrastructure and a process that allows us to do that effectively. And so for me, this is all about human connection, empathy at scale, an adaptive operating system, but it's about your embracing it, because this change only happens if everyone starts to recognize that it's critical to the success of not only media, but the success of actually connecting to people in ways that improve their lives. So I thank you guys for your attention today. I'm going to take a few questions, I believe, that are coming in through Twitter. And I think is it through Twitter, I believe? Coming in through Twitter. I'll take a few questions for the next 15 minutes, and then we'll wrap. But I thank you guys for your attention today. Thank you. All right, so Tony Weaver Jr. says, what new media distribution methods do you think diverse content creators can use to distinguish themselves? So what new media distribution? So, I don't think the answer is about necessarily the distribution methods. I think it's about the content that you want to create, the audience that you want to connect to, and then what distribution is appropriate for that. So if you are creating content that is designed to actually motivate someone to do something, you might be on a certain platform. If you want to create content that wants to excite someone and get them, make them aware of a product, you might be on another platform. For example, for us, if you take the Swarm product that I mentioned before, that product to me, it's not a distribution approach for everything. It's when you want to launch something, when you want to create mass awareness, when you want to create an event. And so I don't think the answer is that it's just a distribution method. I think it's the combination of content and distribution. Okay, all right. So, Aaron Richards Kunkel, any new emerging platforms being tested and added to the content distribution? We're always testing new platforms and adding to a content distribution. I talked a lot about Tasty today, but Tasty is not the only thing that we're pursuing. We have Top Knot, that's about hair and makeup. We have Nifty, that's about DIY. And so those new platforms are developing and evolving, and we think that they're going to be extraordinarily successful for us. The interesting thing is going to be, where do we actually place that for its center of gravity? Which platform do we push it toward? But you can imagine our taking Tasty as a franchise and expanding that to a bunch of different platforms, right? Not only online, but why not have Tasty TV? Or why not have a Tasty pop-up restaurant? And so you can imagine that in terms of a franchise, but you can also imagine our pushing into other areas like hair and makeup, like music, that would allow us to test and learn about other emerging platforms that work within the Buzzfeed system. Okay, what role does third-party measurement play for the Buzzfeeds of the world, where they compete against TV and other media for ad dollars? This is probably the interesting challenge, and it's an interesting challenge in a couple of ways. The third-party measurements for us, we're maybe the only company that's really pursuing a cross-platform network in the way that we do it, right? We intentionally don't drive all the traffic to our site, and so you have ComScore measuring a certain aspect of what we do, but it's probably about 1/5 of all the traffic that we get. And so that's a limitation that we're facing, but we're addressing that limitation by layering on top other forms of third-party measurement that allow our advertisers to see kind of what we're doing on each of the platforms beyond a kind of a typical ComScore. But it is the toughest thing that we're facing, and that any company in the space that's creating social content and distributing it across networks, across platforms, is facing. But I'll say this, in terms of competing against TV, I don't see it as a TV versus digital thing. TV has its place, and TV is really powerful if you want to create an iconic image that's aspirational. If you want something that is mysterious, beautiful, graceful, TV is a great place to be. If you want something that's relatable, that connects to people in the everyday, the social space is a great place to be. And so I think it's hard to say TV versus digital. My hope is that people see the opportunity in each space and how it relates to real people in their real lives, and that social has kind of a special place there. When you create content to you, do you customize the same piece for each platform, or do you create content specific to each platform? So look, I mean, the heart of, and Jonah has said this quite a bit, I think a couple of years ago, the heart of BuzzFeed has been pioneering this native advertising approach, right? Which is whatever platform you are on, make sure that it feels organic to that platform. Make sure it feels natural, that it adds value to the user. So we follow the latter approach. We create content that is specific to each platform. If we're on Snapchat, we are creating content that works within Snapchat, that is native to Snapchat, that connects to the Snapchat users in a way that they feel it adds value. If we're on Instagram, we do the same. I'm going to answer a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap. How have you built empathy inside BuzzFeed? How have you helped people, particularly established media folks, think through that? So what I've tried to do, one of the advantages I think I have is that I lived on the other side. I've seen the top-down approach, and what I know is that a lot of marketers today recognize the limitations of it. It's actually useful if you want to create broad awareness to do it that way, but they recognize that it doesn't lead to engagement. It doesn't necessarily build cultural currency in the marketplace. And so what I've tried to do is to get marketers to think about a broader spectrum of building brand value. Yes, we're going to create awareness, you can do that. But if you want to connect to people in deeper ways, if you want to think about how to build subscribers, how to build advocates, how to get people to interact with your product, how to build cultural currency, we're outlining a value arc that actually shows that spectrum with a bunch of variables underneath it. So we're actually getting very granular now about what are those elements that drive those different aspects of building brand value. How do brands get involved in Swarm, in the Swarm beta? We're going to send something out. There's, first, any brand that's connected to, call your sales rep that you're connected to. But we'll tweet something out today for the Swarm sales connection. I think is that it? I think that is it. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it. Okay.